Yeah, guys, hello. Guys, am I audible to you? Hello. Guys, can you just confirm if I'm audible to you and I'm live or not? Hello. Okay, might be get some server issue with the. Okay, fine. It's live now. Yeah, I think so. There was some server issue before. So I started the live, but I was not actually live. I quietly did not understood what was the problem over there. Okay, fine. Yeah, so I hope so everything is clear from my side. Everything is audible. Like my screen is clearly visible. Okay, great. Okay, great, great, great. Okay, guys. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to 5 days bootcamp on NoSQL DB. And let's start for with today's day one, and let's kind of get into overview. What exactly are we going to discuss in this bootcamp? Okay, so yeah, guys, don't worry. There was just I think so. There was some issue with the streaming app. That's why I went live at the time, but it was not showing me live. Okay, fine, no problem. So yeah, before starting the session, I will give you one or two guidelines. Okay, what are those guidelines that I will be giving? See, first of all, attendance will be shared. I will be sharing a Google form to mark your attendance, and it will be shared only after 7:45, not before 7:45. So everyone do not spam in the chat that you want attendance form or in any other thing. I do not want any spam for attendance, and you can stop writing present sir or present in the chat. That's not how we will be marking the attendance. I will share a Google form over there. You have to mark your attendance and you have to do every work over there. So do not spam over here. Okay, no need to kind of create a rush for everyone. So just have patience, everything will go with the flow, everything will be shared on time. So just keep up with the flow. Okay, just keep patience and keep up with the flow. Now next thing, so as this is database bootcamp, so we will be covering maximum to maximum. We will be covering theoretical parts. Okay, there will be very less to kind of minimal, like minimal practical part. If you want to get more into practicalities, so you can go with the last bootcamp of backend. Okay, so that will be much more better. And so we will discuss about the theoretical concepts of our databases. What is SQL? What is NoSQL? Why we use MongoDB, JSON, BSON? Like this, all things will be discussed in these sessions of 5 days. And at last, might be case we'll try implementing one or two things. We'll see how we can connect our DB with Node and other things. At last, on the day fifth, we will be seeing that. Okay. So that will be a small flow that I told you. So today, what we are going to discuss is we will be discussing what is NoSQL, because I have mentioned exclusively NoSQL. What exactly is NoSQL? What it means? Okay, and then we will differentiate between SQL and NoSQL databases. We will understand what is clear separation between those two. Okay. After that, what is the next thing that we are going to discuss? The types of NoSQL databases. So in that case, types of NoSQL database will understand how all are the ways in which we can store database in not in a tabular form but in a NoSQL database form. So that will also be discussed, and then at last we'll close it up with understanding why exactly are we using MongoDB? What is the need of MongoDB? What is other like collection? What is other things? What is JSON, BSON? So we will be discussing these all things for today. So these are all theoretical parts. So you have to keep patience with the theory because it will take time. It will take time to understand. So it would be much better if you do not spam much in the chat. That will be favorable for me because I also have to see the chat again and again. So if there is genuine doubts that comes in, so I would miss those doubts too. Okay, so I do not want that to happen, guys. Please stop please stop commenting present or present. We are not taking attendance right now. I will share the form. Once the form is shared, you can mark it over there. Okay, yeah, whatever notes we are making right here, I will be sharing that. So wherever the community has been made, you will get those notes. So do not worry about that. Everything that's created over here, every note, every code link, whatever it's created, we will be sharing that with you. Okay, do not worry about that. That's job from our end. So we will be doing that. Okay. Fine. So what we can do now is we can go into the lecture now. See, guys, this is 1 hour session. So we will be closing at 8. Might be case we would extend 8:05 or something. Like for the first day, obviously we'll not do. So attendance. only after 7:45, and we'll close at 8. Okay, fine. So let's get into understanding what exactly is NoSQL DB. Okay, so let's create our notes. So we are talking about NoSQL DB, and what is the definition of NoSQL DB? Now, NoSQL is also known as not only SQL. Okay, what does it mean? Is okay. I will add that too. So not only SQL. What does it actually means? So not only SQL. So I hope so you have somewhat knowledge of SQL, what SQL means and why is it used. So SQL is a structured database, okay? Structured database, and it stores all the data in the form of tables, okay? It stores all the data in the form of tables. So apart from tables too, we have many type of data which we call it as NoSQL databases, okay? So now, in case of NoSQL, we do not follow a tabular structure. Okay, so I will write it up. We do not follow a tabular structure. So in case of tables, in case of SQL, what do we have? We have a table. Okay, we have certain table, and right like this, we have some tables. We have some values, out of which one will be your primary key and other attributes we have. So this is a kind of SQL structure. But in case of NoSQL, there will not be any table created. There will not be any table structure being used. So that is why we call it as NoSQL. Guys, please do not spam present or attendance. Okay, that will be much more better for us and you too. It would be better if, like, see, we do not want to keep you in timeout, or else we do not want you to block from the chat, because I understand you would be having some doubts. So please do not do anything such that we are forced to keep you in timeout, or else we are forced to block you out. Okay. So that will be much more better for me as well as for you too. Okay. Okay. So we do not follow any tabular structure. So in the starting, when database was created, when database was actually it actually came into play, the only structure to store data was in the form of tables. Okay, we create rows, we create columns. So based upon that, we were storing all the data over there. Now, so now the situation arises that we do not wanted to use that. There were some conditions where we wanted to come out of those. Okay, so when actually it arised, when we got into storing big data. Okay, so when we started storing big data, and along with big data, so for better scalability also. So in case of big data, suppose you have suppose, let's take an example, you have an e-commerce website. Okay, so in that e-commerce website there would be around not only thousands, there would be around millions of data getting stored. Okay, so every time you cannot have a SQL and structured database. So why are we using this? To increase scalability. Okay, so to increase the scalability of our database, we are right now switching to NoSQL DBs. Okay. So I'm not telling that SQL DBs were not scalable, but for much better scalability, we want NoSQL to come into play. That is why we are storing our data in NoSQL format. Now, if we get into properties of what all things do we have in my NoSQL database. Okay. So let's get into properties. So just a minute. Yeah. So in properties, if we discuss, first thing that I already told was scalability. So we wanted to increase the scalability of our data. So obviously, if you are storing a data, you would revisit that data, you would perform many operations inside that data. Okay, there might be search operations, there might be updation operations, and everything. So in a large set of database, you need to have a scalable DB. Okay, so if your DB is not scalable, if you cannot actually increase it to a max size, then it's not a beneficial thing for us. Okay, so first thing is scalability, and what is the next thing that comes into play? Next thing is flexibility. Okay, now, flexibility talks about what type of data you can store in. Okay. So, suppose if we talk about our normal cases of only SQL data, it can only store string forms or else text forms inside its table. So, now a situation arises. What happens is you have a platform for which you want to store some videos. It might be a case you want to store some videos or some media files. So SQL does not support that part. Okay, SQL will obviously not be able to store those medias. So it can only store string values, or else you can call it as text or numbers. Okay, like that only. So string values. So for that case, when you want to store different type of datas, for that we discuss our flexibility. Okay, so SQL is great, but there is some problem with the flexibility. Okay, we do not have a flexibility to store whatever data we want. So that is why we shifted to a NoSQL database. Now, after flexibility, what's the next thing that comes into play is managing large data. Okay, so managing large data is also one property. Managing large data. Okay. So whenever we have a large set of data, that would be much better to manage them up in your NoSQL DB. Okay, fine. So these are some properties that we have in our NoSQL DB. So now if we talk about the use case of the NoSQL DB, so what all places can we actually use these NoSQL DBs? So use cases. So everywhere, wherever you are creating a mobile application, wherever you are creating a web application, everywhere no SQL DBs have their use cases. Okay. So the first use case that we have in this term is creating mobile, okay, mobile and web applications. Okay. So mobile and web applications, wherever you want to create it up, we will be using no SQL case, no SQL DB. For that case, it's most ideal database that you can store, like that you can use in this case. So, like, what are things do we have more? So, along with your development part, if you want to store, if you want to store big data, in that case also it can be used. It can also be used for content management systems. Okay, so that is also one use case. Content management systems. Okay, now how exactly can we use in these terms? Okay, suppose if we go into architecture, how exactly can we use these terms, use them? So what happens is, suppose let's see, we have a use case in which I want to store audio. Suppose I have a use case in which I want to store audio. Now, will audio be stored in SQL? No, obviously not. SQL cannot take audio inputs. Okay, SQL can only take string inputs. It can only store strings. So if I want to store audio, I have to go to other DBs, other databases, other flexible databases. So in case of audio, what all things can I use in this case? So if I give you some examples of databases that I can use, I can either go with one of the famous thing that I have is Superbase. We have one thing. If we are storing media, we can also go with AWS S3. Okay, it's not a DB, but it's a cluster. But I'm considering it in. It's not DB, obviously. I'm specifying it up. Okay, so Superbase DB can also be used whenever you want to store medias. You can use S3. We have other two also. Okay. So these are some use cases that we can actually have in this respective case. Okay. Now let's understand a precise difference between SQL and no SQL database. Okay. SQL versus no SQL DB. So what does it mean? So I have already created a kind of table for your help in that case. Okay. 1 minute. Wait just a minute, let me resize it up. Okay. Okay, I think it would be better if I write it again because it's getting somewhat clustering. Okay, let's write it up. Okay, it would be much better if I write it up. So let's go with SQL versus no SQL. What exactly do we have difference in SQL and no SQL? Okay, so now first let's talk about it in terms of data modeling. So how exactly are we storing our data? So for data modeling, what all things do we have in this case? So see, sorry, 1 minute. Just a moment, please. Just a moment. Okay, it's not getting pasted. Okay, let's write it up. Okay, I was trying to save some time, but I don't think so. It will allow me to do. So in terms of data modeling, let's see. For the first column, I will be keeping SQL, and for the second column, I will be keeping my NoSQL DBs. So in case of SQL, what type of data, like model of data, do we store? So we were using a tabular method. Okay, tabular method with predefined schemas. Okay, so tabular methods with predefined schemas and relations. So relations, or else you can also call it as relationship. So this was a method of storing data in terms of SQL. Now, what about NoSQL? In case of NoSQL, what structure do we use? So in case of NoSQL, we have a diverse model structure. So diverse model structure specifies that we do not have any fixed structure. Okay, yeah, we should see. If you're talking about S3 and Superbase DB, we will be able to store whatever items we want, whatever media items we want. Okay. S3 is not a DB. S3 is bucket for storing all the media items that you have. Okay. We cannot actually call it as DB because AWS does not specify it as a database. Okay. So in case of my NoSQL, we have a diverse model. So in case of diverse model, what are things do we have? We can either store it in the form of document. Okay, we have that option. We can store it in the form of key value pair. Okay, and we can store it in the form of columns too. We can store it in the form of graph. So whatever possible data structures you can think of, we have that flexibility. Okay, Kanishka, I'm again and again repeating this flexibility part. Okay. So, flexibility in this term means that you can store a data in whatever form you want. Okay. That's what flexibility is specified over here. So, SQL was only a rigid tabular method of storing the data. But now, in case of NoSQL, we went on with a diverse method. Okay. Fine. Schema is a structure of like data. Suppose if I take an example for schema, let me define that first. I think so. You will be having a problem with the schema. So let me define that first. So schema, what schema means? Schema is a predefined structure of data. Okay, predefined structure of data. Now, what does predefined structure means? Suppose if we are talking about class, okay, let's take class in your schools. So everything over there, whatever seating arrangements we have, everything were predefined. Okay, everything were predefined. So you define a particular set of rules how and where everyone will be sitting. So right now, like that only, we define a particular fields that will be taken for storing a data. Let's take an example of your student DB. Let's understand student DB or a student. Yeah, let's take an student database. So in case of student database, what all things do we store? So in case of student database, we will be storing student ID. Okay. Then after student ID, what next thing we will be storing? Student name, then student class, then student section. So these are the things that might we normally would be storing in this case. So now if I want to insert anything more than this specified structure, I have four things in my structure. What is four things? Student ID, name, class, and section. So if I add something more than this, I would not be able to add it. Okay. So that's what we call it as a schema. Schema is a structure in which you are storing a data, or else a structure in which your data should be stored in your DB. So in this case, the schema that we have for student is like this. Okay, student ID will be stored, student name, student class, student section. What if I want to store students' marks? I would not be able to store. Why? Because it's not already there in my schema. Okay, so understand schema as a predefined structure of your data storage. Okay, yeah, I will count it inside the student ID itself. Okay, roll number and whatever you have. Okay, so first thing was my way of storing the data. So I discussed tabular and diverse. Now let's go with the next thing that I have. Okay, so next is schema. So again, the schema in case of my SQL will be rigid. Okay, so schema is going to be rigid. It's not going to be kind of flexible, rigid and fixed in terms of no SQL. We will not be able to actually add anything more than what we have defined. Okay, so change required altering your table structure. So suppose what happens in between, you want to change something out. Okay, you want to change, you want to add something new. So then you have to change all of the structure for your table. Okay, so you have to again alter whole of your database table, and you have to add a new column over there. So that is the problem in that case. Okay, so whenever you are defining a schema, in that case, you have to change everything that's required whenever you are adding any new data in that case. Okay, so that is why we call it as rigid and fixed. Okay, 1 minute. Using your query in SQL, yeah, we can add. Obviously, that's what I'm covering over there. So by using query, you have to alter your table structure, and then you would be able to add it up. Okay. So now, in case of my NoSQL, I have this dynamic and flexible nature. Okay. So this is called as dynamic and flexible. Okay, so we will be having a dynamic and flexible nature, and document can be of different field, can have different fields. Okay, so that's what we have in terms of flexibility for my NoSQL DBs. Okay, so I also the schema part is also clear. Yeah, guys, you have that option, okay? Obviously, but you have to change whole of the structure. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not telling that it's impossible or you can't do that. Obviously, you can do that, but you have to alter the whole table and the previous values that we have, the previous values in which we just had four values. Suppose what's happened is, suppose I defined a structure like this, okay? After defining a structure like this, I stored approximately 100 datas. Okay, I have stored 100 datas, and after 100 data, what is the next thing that I do? I alter my table. So this is kind of flow that I'm trying to make. So alter table. So after your 100 datas, you have altered the table, and you have now added. What is the next thing that you have added? You have added the one more column. What's the one more column? That is your marks. Suppose that's what I do. Okay, so I will mark student marks. Okay. So now after storing my 100 values, I have stored student marks. Now what will happen in my table? What is going to happen in my table now? So the 100 data that I have stored previously will have my student mark as null. Okay. Until or unless we go to each data again and again and we update each data for student mark, I am going to have a null value for that case. Okay. So see the table structure, we cannot call it as Excel cell, but the structure is kind of same over there too. It's not Excel cell. Obviously, it's not an Excel cell. Okay. So now understand this. Okay. So after 100 data, I'm altering my table. I'm adding more data to it. So the starting 100 data that I have added over there, I will have a null value. Okay. Over there, I am going to have a null value. So for that case, I have to then again go to each of my values, each of my data, and I have to update marks for each of them. Okay. So that's what I'm talking in terms of flexibility for SQL and no SQL. Now, what is the next thing? So in case of SQL and no SQL, the query language, okay? So SQL obviously have a query language of SQL itself, and no SQL have many others. So it's not an important thing. We'll discuss next, that is scalability. So in terms of scalability, how scalable is my SQL and how scalable is not mine, okay? Yeah, Jasmine, that's what I'm telling. See, everywhere you have an applications. For SQL, you have MySQL and other applications that you can use. NoSQLs, we have applications like MongoDB Compass on a local, MongoDB Atlas on cloud. So we have many. Okay. Yeah. In case of NoSQL, you do not have to follow a rigid layout. Okay. Okay. So in case of scalability, we can only do a vertical scalability. Okay. We cannot do a horizontal scalability in this case. So I will move this primarily. I will name it as vertical scalability. Now, I do not actually know if you understand the vertical and horizontal scalability. So I will give you an example. Let's go on Google and let's show you an example, vertical and horizontal scalability. Okay. There might be some cases where there would be some spelling mistakes. You can ignore those. So, what exactly is vertical and horizontal scalability? Let's understand that. So, now, see, in case of my vertical scalability, what does I mean by vertical scalability is adding more of CPUs and RAMs. Okay, that's what I mean by vertical scalability. Okay, so adding 1 minute. Okay, so adding more CPU and RAMs. So that's what I mean by vertical scalability. So you haven't increased your number of DBs or else number of database servers, but you have actually increased the CPUs and RAMs in case of vertical scalability. Now, if I talk about the horizontal scalability means adding more of the DB servers. Okay. So every database has some servers, everything. So in this case, I will define it as adding more DB servers or nodes. So in database, we also have a concept of nodes in case of multiple servers. Okay, just a minute. Fine. Okay, obviously not studying. If you have knowledge of it, I will obviously not give a demo of SQL in Canva. I hope so. You know what is Canva used for, and because I know very perfectly what is Canva used for. Okay, fine. So vertical scalability and horizontal scalability. Okay. Yeah, you will be getting notes. Okay, guys, please do not comes with these all doubts. Okay, will I be running my SQL code in Canva or will I be running my SQL code somewhere? Okay, okay, fine. What's the next thing? Yeah, obviously there are many jobs that go for SQL background. Okay, if no SQL is introduced, it does not clearly means that SQL is out of phase. SQL has a very important use case in databases. No SQL comes to give you flexibility, but at the end you will be using SQL. Okay, understand this. So now in this job market, in this market, what we actually do is we actually combine SQL and NoSQL together and we perform our operations. That's the best case scenario that we use. Okay. Now, if we talk about the use cases, we already discussed the use cases and what all use cases do we have in this case? So see, so in case use cases wherever we need a data with structured and consistent format. Okay. So if we want a very structured and consistent format, one minute. Structured and consistent format, then in that case we'll be using SQL. And if we do not use, like we do not want any structure, we want an unstructured form. In that case, we'll be using no SQL. Okay, unstructured form. Okay, so whenever you we want unstructured form, in that case we will be defining it as no SQL. Okay, can we use table in NoSQL? Obviously not. See, if I take an example of MongoDB. So if you know that MongoDB stores data in the JSON format, it does not stores data in table formats. So using tables inside NoSQL will not be quite good and possible. That will be much better. Study King, see, do you know CPUs and RAMs, right? So vertical scaling, suppose we have two servers. Let's if you want, let's go into deeper. Suppose I have a case. This is my DB, that is database. So now this database server will be having RAMs, ROM, CPU, everything will be having over there. Okay. So suppose if I go to increase the amount of data that I have, or else amount of data saving, or else let's discuss amount of RAM we have. In that case, we'll call it as vertical scaling. That is increasing a capacity of a single server. So that's why we call it as what? Vertical scaling. If I talk about horizontal scaling, in that case, I will be increasing the number of DB servers. Okay, so suppose I had one, I will increase it to two. Okay, so that is why we differentiate it as vertical and horizontal scaling. So in vertical scaling on a single server, we will be going on increasing the capacity of your server. In case of horizontal, we will be increasing the number of servers that we have. Okay. Yeah, you will be getting the notes. Yeah, we have JSON format. One of them, we have other more formats. Okay, one of the formats, the best used and the most used is JSON format. Okay, fine. Guys, I will be covering that. Wait, relax, have patience. Everything will be covered. Okay, how to delete, how to do what all CRUD operations we have. Everything will be covered. Do not worry about. Now, let's get into what all types do we have. What all types that can we actually cover in NoSQL. Okay, types of data in NoSQL. That's what we will be covering now. Okay. I told you SQL has a great significance. What other answer do you want from me? SQL has a great significance in the market. Whatever new DB is introduced, SQL is not getting phased out. At the end of the day, you might need a structured data. Okay. So for that case, we have that. Okay. Fine. So now what all use case, sorry, what all types do we have in this case? So can you explain scalability in this? I already explained that, Shreya. So for null, what we can use default value query in 1 minute. Let me read the whole comment. For null, we can use default value query. Yeah, obviously, that's your flexibility and choice. What you want to use in that case. So yeah, first thing that we have is what type. We have a document based. Okay, document based storage. So what is document based storage? Now, over here, we will be discussing about JSON. Okay. I will extensively discuss JSON and JSON again. Okay. No worry. But let's understand, first of all, what is document based. So, stores data in single document in form of JSON. See, guys, do not confuse it with file system. This is not a file system. File system is different, totally different from here. We are storing data in a single document, but not in the form of file systems. We had file system concept earlier before SQL was introduced and other things, DBMS was introduced. So obviously this is not a file system kind of thing. Okay. See, the installation tutorial will try covering the MongoDB. So over there, I hope so. If you can install it on your own, that will be much more better for me to move forward quickly. Okay. Yeah, so we are discussing, we are storing the data in the form of JSON in a single file. Okay, fine. Okay, so now what actually is it is so where document is a self-contained document spelling. Yeah, so where document is a self-contained what? Document is a self-contained unit. Okay, so you have 1 DB, you are storing student database. So it will be a whole document inside which we will have a JSON, and each JSON will store each of the students' data. Now, will it be flexible? Obviously, it will be flexible. Can I add more data? Yes, you can add more data. Can I change schema? Yeah, you can change schema. Whatever you want to do, everything can be done. Wait, guys, Jason will be explained to you. Do not worry about that. Okay, everything that I'm covering here will be explained. So no need to panic that I will leave out without explaining that concept. I will be explaining that. Yeah, JavaScript object notation. Now, the next way that we can store is in the form of key value pair. So if you have studied hash maps in your data structures, over there you would be having a knowledge of what key and value is. Okay, so storing a certain value with a key or else with a identifier. So key is used to actually search for that value. Okay, so this is the simplest type of NoSQL storage. Okay, so storing database, storing your data, sorry, storing your data as a collection of key and value. Okay, So that is what we are calling it as key value pair. So there will be one key, there will be one values that will be stored in this case. Okay. So what is the benefit of key value storage? Okay. So it has a very good read and write speed. Okay. It has a very good read and write speed. That is what we have in this case. Okay. So this read and write speed that we have in this case for the key value is very great. So you have keys, you have values, you do search based upon the keys. Okay. So in case of hash maps, also you would have noticed that whatever search mechanism we apply that works on only key. Okay. So you search for the value based upon the keys. Okay. Yeah, it will be ending at 8 o'clock. Now, what's the next thing? Next is my column oriented storage. Column oriented storage. Okay, next thing is this. So in case of oriented storage, how do we actually perform the storage in this case? Okay. Yeah, obviously everyone who has registered will be getting the certificate. After the session, you will get a quite like small assignment to complete. Once you submit those assignment, you will be getting your certificates. Okay. Fine. So column based, what will be the example of key value pair? See, suppose you are storing students' name based upon the roll numbers or registration numbers. So we can consider that as a key value pair. Now, key value pair, I hope so you understand the mechanism, is the key should be unique. Okay. So every time a student comes in, his or her name would be same, but the roll number that's assigned to him or her is always unique. Or if you're in university, you'll be having registration number or application number. Okay. So the registration number and application number is always unique for each candidate. So based upon key, that is registration number or your like whatever you can call it as, along with your name. So name will be your value and key will be your registration number. Okay, that is what we can call it as key value pair. Now the search that you will perform that will be on based upon the registration number, that is the key. See, we are not going to cover whole of the DBMS here, so I see we will not be covering joins over here. Okay, so left join, right join, inner, outer, whatever join you are talking about, we will not be covering over here. I will be covering all the DBMS concepts that is required for the development part. Okay. You would have registered for the bootcamp, right? I don't know quite how you will be checking that. If you have registered, in that case, you would be knowing that. Okay. Okay. So, quotes column oriented. Let's discuss the column oriented. Stores the data based upon columns instead of rows. Okay. So instead of rows, we store the data in terms of columns. Okay. So if you want to take an example of what type of DB we can go and search for, that is column oriented. So we have one of the DB known as Cassandra. Okay. So Cassandra is also a famous DB. So it will be Cassandra. Okay. So if you want to search it up and if you want to know more, so that will be where can I get my registration number? See, in boot camps, we do not have registration numbers. Okay. It's not something we are not in college right now. We are in boot camp. So we do not have any registration number assigned to you. Okay. We haven't done that. Okay. Obviously, you will be learning most extensively. You will have experience with Python and might be a case according to your college, you will learn C++ or Java. Okay. So column oriented storage. Now, next is my graph based. Okay. So next one is my graph based. So in case of graph based, what all things do we have? Let's discuss that now. Yeah. So fine. Sorry, I can't replace. I will not answer that. Okay. So you create data as a node. Okay. Nodes and edges. So you have seen graphs, right? In data structures and algorithms, you have seen graphs. So graphs, how does it works? So in graphs, you have nodes, okay, and those nodes are attached, or else those nodes are connected, interconnected with edges in that graphs, okay. So that is what we are talking about over here too. So the data is stored in the form of nodes, and each node is connected with each other with edges. So we have this graph based storage too. Okay, we will not be getting much deeper into this, but obviously we need to get the intro of it, so that's why we are discussing it now. Okay, see, all the DB can be connected with whatever language you have. Okay, so yeah, fine. Okay, so you mean there are no rules on not yeah, that's what I mean. Fine. So now let's discuss. You can use MongoDB at less online cloud Mongo. If you are deploying any application, then go with MongoDB at least. If you want to work on the local system, then you can go with a MongoDB Compass. We have two options, okay? Whatever you want to choose, whatever seems best for you. Marshall, I don't think so. Board should concern you, okay? Which board I am using right now, I don't think so that would concern you. I'm just trying to explain some theoretical concepts. So we can move forward with whatever suits best or whatever we have in our hand, okay? Yeah, all the recordings will be available after the live. Do not worry about that, okay? See, Ankita, most of the things will be theoretical, and some of the functions we will see in kind of practical, but most of the things will be theoretical because we are sitting here to understand why exactly NoSQL is used, what are benefits of NoSQL is there, what is my CRUD operation, what all operations can I perform, and all things. Okay, yeah, key will always be unique, but value can be same. No, the attendance link has not been shared yet. Let me test your patience first of all. Okay, now why MongoDB? We are getting to the main point now because we are going to use MongoDB. So why exactly do we need MongoDB? What does MongoDB has that we can use it up? Okay. So as we already discussed about scalability and other things, so same things we have over here too in terms of MongoDB too. So first thing that we have is scalability. Okay. So how exactly we have our scalability? Okay. Lahore Motorway City. I hope so. I am clearly. Yeah. Just wait 1 or 2 minutes. I will share that in this. Okay. Okay, so what is scalability? So now I talked about two scalability. One was vertical, and another one was horizontal. So what category does MongoDB falls in? So MongoDB falls in horizontal scalability. Okay, scalability. So it means we can increase the number of servers we want. We can increase the capacity as we want. Okay. So what does it means? Means that you can distribute the data across multiple platforms. Okay. So it is horizontally scalable. Okay. Sorry, not platforms, but actually servers. Okay. So it is a horizontally scalable platform, in which case you can distribute the data on a multiple servers. So no need to increase the capacity of a single server. See, every server has a limit. Okay, you can increase the capacity, but up to a certain limit. You cannot exceed that. So for that case, we have horizontal scalability case. So that is why we are using it up. Okay, we are using the horizontal scalability in this case. What is the next property that we have? Next is again the flexibility, as we discussed previously. Flexibility. How flexible is my MongoDB? Let's understand that. And in terms of flexibility, what I am talking about in this case, okay? Okay, fine. Guys, I hope so you do not want to get blocked, right? One minute. Fine. So now in terms of flexibility, what I'm talking about is, so what flexibility does we have? Okay, so now first thing that I have is dynamic schema. I have a schema, but it's not a very structured schema. I do not have very rigid schema. We have a dynamic schema. Okay, so for that case, we call it as scalable. Oh, sorry, flexible. Okay, so you can change the data models. So we have models in our MongoDB. Okay, so without performing complex tasks. Okay, so we will call it as a model. So we have a certain model that you have defined. Okay, so in that certain model, you can obviously have changes. Okay, you can obviously increase the number of items that you want to store. You want to whatever you changes you want to do, you can do in that case. Okay, fine. That is my flexibility. And the last thing that I have is JSON like storage. Okay, so whatever storage, whatever data I am storing, so I will be storing it in JSON like storage. Okay, or else you can also call it as JSON storage. Okay, so what JSON is? JSON, we will be discussing that. Obviously, we do not have that much time today. So we will be discussing it up tomorrow only, but we'll discuss that up. Do not worry about that. Okay, it stores data in BSON format. BSON format is a binary form of my JSON format. So, which is binary representation of JSON. So it is also a JSON format, but it's a binary format, binary representation of your JSON format. So that's why we call it as BSON format. Okay. So these are the three properties that we have in MongoDB. And now I will share the attendance. Just wait a minute and have patience. Okay. Just have a patience. I will share the attendance. Yeah, so I have pinned the attendance form on the top. Now you can mark your attendance. And so yeah, one disclaimer that I'm giving you today itself is do not leave today's attendance. I do not want to have anyone coming to me tomorrow saying that, sir, I left out yesterday's attendance because of some issue. So attendance, you cannot mark the previous day attendance on any other day. So if we are taking attendance today, by tomorrow, those attendance forms will be closed. So you would not be able to mark it up. So better you mark your attendance today, you clear it out that it's marked because I would not be able to help you in next class for that case. Okay, fine. Okay. Yeah, so quickly mark your attendance and whatever concepts we have now, we will be covering up in the next class. We'll understand what is like collection, what is BSON and JSON, and I will tell you what all tools you need for this MongoDB, and then we'll understand CRUD operations. What is CRUD? What all things do we have in CRUD, and what all functions do we have in CRUD operations? Okay, so we will be looking into that. Okay. Yeah. So for tomorrow, we'll cover MongoDB at extensively. Today we just got into the intro part. We just got into understanding what it is. What is not showing? Sorry, attendance is not showing. Yeah, I can see it's showing. Okay. Just mark it up here. Okay. Just add whatever details you have. Yeah, Kanish, I will be covering what is JSON and BSON tomorrow. Do not worry about that. I will bring a sample of JSON format so that you can understand what exactly is JSON. Okay. So yeah, if you are in the learning phase of this, so I will suggest do not use any AI tools. Okay. So AI will hamper your learning curve. It will not allow you to learn. You will always go on again and again using the AI. That is not much better thing. Okay. Yeah, increase the size of data storage. That's what we mean in terms of scalability. If you want to have a better understanding of JavaScript, then it would be much better that you first of all understand the front end. If you're not interested, just try covering the JavaScript out of it. That will be much more better. Then you can move to the backend. Yeah, Jasmine, if you have marked your attendance, you can leave and we'll now continue our class tomorrow. Yeah, all the recordings will be available. Do not worry about that. Everything will be available on the DevTown channel. Attendance form developer. Search for pinned comment. Over there, it's pinned over there. Okay, so you can connect whatever database is with your backend, and that's how you will be connecting it with your website. Okay, guys, attendance form is already pinned on the top. It is a Google form. Please fill that form. Okay. Akshit, I already told that I will be covering JSON and BSON again. So it was just an intro of BSON. So we'll explain you what JSON and BSON is. Okay. We do not have any assignment today. We are covering theoretical concepts, so no assignments. Okay, fine, guys. So just go with the flow. Just revise the topics that we have done today. And again, tomorrow we'll understand more about the MongoDB and other things. Okay. Where to mark your attendance? In the Google form, guys. There is a Google form already pinned in the comment. I can see many of you have marked it. So everyone mark it over there. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you for that. Anime Hub, can you come out of that doubt? Sorry, I can't replace us. First of all, the English is wrong. And next thing, yeah, it can and it can also not. If you are good enough, it will not. If you're not good enough, it will surely replace you. Okay, guys, fine. So, thank you for joining today's session. We'll meet you tomorrow at the same time with the same energy. We'll cover these topics that we have. Okay, fine, guys. Okay, so then I will take my leave. Thank you for joining, guys. Bye bye. Good night. Have a wonderful night. Bye, guys.